Hey everyone, and welcome to another night of Women's World of Fishing Monday Night Takeover. I'm not sure if you saw just a second ago where we went live and then we stopped going live. So I had to put another feed out. So it was a little bit of a mess up. So I'm going to give just a minute for the new feed to go out. And if you'll notice, it is just me tonight, unfortunately, but it's a for a good reason. Angie is actually down in Florida this week. She is down at ICAST 2021. I'm not sure if she's listening tonight. If you are, Angie, I am super jealous. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I know that she has to be having a great time down there. I actually have several friends that are down there. So I hope all of you guys are having a great time. Um, I cannot even imagine the amount of fun that you all must be having. Um, the last year with all of the the rescheduling and cancellations, I think the entire event was canceled last year. So I know there are a lot of companies that are there this year. Um, that have really been chomping at the bit to get down there. So everybody keep an eye out because there is going to be some new gear, some new baits, some new everything that is going to be hitting the market soon, that is going to blow us away. I am actually involved with one specific innovation that I am just so excited to announce that I cannot wait to tell everybody about. So, more on that later. So one other thing, I just recently got back from Salt Lake City, Utah. I am so exhausted. I knew that Angie wasn't going to be here tonight, so I didn't want to cancel two nights in a row, or two Mondays in a row. But I have to give a shout out to four of my second cousins out there because they possibly could be watching. So, Michaela, Savvy, Will, and Lainey. I just wanted to give a shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for being such fans of the bass fishing for me, for women, for Bass and Gal. Surprises could possibly be on the way for you guys, but I couldn't believe that you guys were such fans. And I loved the week I had with my family out there. I love you kids. You guys have kind of taken over the love for my actual first cousins. So the second cousins love you guys. Item number two. This is huge. So at ICAST this year, I took a screenshot because I don't want to misquote this. So at ICAST this year for the ladies, they had an opportunity um, for female anglers to team up together. And this is what it said for the registration. It says, calling all female bass anglers. This is your chance to qualify for Team USA Bass and represent the United States in the 2022 Pan American Black Bass Championship. The highest finishing team of two female anglers will earn a spot on Team USA Bass alongside with Jacob Wheeler, John Cox, Mark Daniels Jr., Dustin Connell, Brian Latimer, Scott Martin, and other top pros. Um, wow, that's humongous. We have made up so much ground in such a short amount of time for women in professional bass fishing. For those of you who are newer to the channel, I know that I did probably way too late in the day, but I did a kind of a shout out for some of my new TikTok friends to come join the show. Because there we are all coming together, and women in fishing, we are the fastest growing demographic still. And the Lady Bass Anglers Association, the LBAA, has, you know, really just groomed us to continue to be able to compete professionally. And a lot of other women are fishing these other tours, and there's so many opportunities for us to compete on a professional level if that's what we want to do. And we have two anglers with the LBAA who are my personal friends that I'm so proud of that are actually competing in this. So, one is Sherry Jacks, and her partner is Nikki Joe. They're both from Alabama. They're going to be competing in this. And another one is Pam Horn, and her partner is Anastasia Patterson. Pam is from Arkansas, but Anastasia is from South Carolina. So they're both going to be going down there. They actually start the competition tomorrow. You know, they're both my friends. I'm not picking sides. I just wish them both all the luck in the world. I hope they do well. And I'm just excited to see who is going to represent us alongside the gentlemen. So we'll see how that pans out. But it's just super exciting that women are going to go and compete together, and that they're actually going to be representing the USA. So that's just something that's new and that is super exciting. I'm so happy to have some friends involved. So we'll see how that pans out. We should know something. I'm pretty sure it's a 1 day event. If somebody, just in case that's not the case, if somebody, if anybody that knows that is watching, if you could comment on probably the Women's World of Fishing page. I know that most people are watching on Facebook, and since it's just me, I'm having a hard time watching at all the different places. But let me know if that's not the case. But I'm pretty sure it's just a one day event. So, okay, let's get into what we were going to have covered today. And I'm probably not going to be able to cover all of it today because I definitely want to um, be able to get Angie's input on this and give everybody time to submit questions on this. So we'll probably come back to it next week as well, because this is a really huge um, topic. And I actually spent quite a bit of time talking to my family in Salt Lake about this, because they have a lot of water, not a lot of bass waters, but they do have quite a bit of different like shore fishing and stuff like that. And it's just that they're mostly trout and, different things. So I think that most people, when they start out, we talked about this last week, a lot of them start off of the shore. Most people can't go, you know, right off of the bat and go out and start fishing off of a boat unless somebody that they know has one. So, one of the things that I do is, well, Angie had talked about the website takemefishing.org, which is an excellent resource for places to fish, species specific information for your state, your area, all kinds of stuff that you can find particular to you, your area. Um, and I've found a lot of places around me because I haven't done hardly any tournament fishing this year, which is crazy for me. This is the least active I've been in actual tournament fishing, and it's been, health related. I'm starting physical therapy. I'm, doing different things. So I just needed to dial it back. And I'll tell you what, I said this in the write up. I've heard a lot of people say, like, oh, if you've got a boat, you have all the advantage in the world. I can't catch anything from the bank. And people just automatically assume, well, I shouldn't fish if I don't have a boat. It's not true. I last year, my biggest fish of the year was from a pond, and it wasn't some, hidden farm pond that nobody got to fish. If you have access to that, fish it, because there are going to be some monsters in there and you definitely have the upper hand. But that pond also has given me my biggest fish of the year this year. And that pond is highly pressured. It is in a public park that has a dog park, that has running trails, bike trails, basketball courts, a huge frisbee golf course that I didn't even know was as popular as it is. So people fish it all the time, and it is not a big pond. And in all honesty, if I was not as exhausted as I am, my intention was actually to film this episode at this pond, because the pond looks horrible. Like, it just looks horrible. There's if you see the thumbnail for this show, and the pond in the middle where it just says the pond bowl, that's the one that I'm talking about that has given me my two good fish last year and this year. They just look very non bassy. They don't have any structure that the eye can see, nothing special, nothing. I mean, it just looks really bad. Um and so that's why, I want you guys to know that because you don't have a boat, because you don't have any hidden farm ponds to go to, it doesn't matter if you're going to a public park or whatever that you can find. Go to some of these ponds. You're going to catch fish. There are bass in there. Um, I cannot even tell you how many decent fish I have caught out of some of these high pressured ponds. Um, you know, Another thing that I wanted to point out is the misconception that also, if you have a boat, that you're never going to get skunked, that you're never going to have a tough day, that you'll always have the upper hand. That's not always true either. Um, I have plenty, and I mean plenty of days where I go out on the water on my boat. I have a nice skeeter, and there are plenty of days I go out on the water on my boat, can fish a lot of water, and I'll go without a bite, without a fish, without anything, because that's fishing. That is just what we do. And we know that going in, that it's not easy. There are a lot of factors at play that we probably don't even know about. We can guess, but we don't know. And so you've really got to keep that in mind when you go out to fish these ponds. Keep in mind, there's only so far that they can go. If you're going to assume that fish are in that pond, they didn't jump out and go to the next one over. So you know that they're in there. There's only so far away that they can go. So you have to approach it like, okay, how can I break this down? Because there is always going to be certain things to pick out that is going to be special to a largemouth. We can assume that there's no smallmouth in there, there's no Kentucky bass, spotted bass. We're dealing with largemouth. So when you look at it, if you're looking at, the two other thumbnails that I had on there, is the pond with vegetation and a pond with kind of a mixture of things. And I think that a lot of times those are a little bit easier just because we know that largemouth love any type of structure. Anything that they can find that, number one, is going to provide them like an ambush point. So, something that can disguise them. So, whether it's behind a rock or behind some grass or under a dock or just something that they can hide from that allows them to jump out and eat some kind of bait fish or something like that, um, they're going to use that to their advantage. So that's always a place to say, you know what, there's a good possibility that that would be a place that a fish would be. The same thing with like the vegetation, the like the the one that I have on the thumbnail, it's like lily pads everywhere. And that's kind of like an overwhelming amount, I guess you would say, and they could be anywhere under there. So just covering as much of that as possible. Um, I I don't like to fish like a never ending row of lily pads. I I would I would be the one to say, "You know what? There are lily pads everywhere. I'm gonna go and find some reeds." Like I would look for something different. But like a bass is going to use anything that they can to give them an advantage for an ambush point. So then if you go to like and I was looking to see like what I could use for an example for the thumbnails. These might not look anything like what's available in your area, but that's okay. Um the pond with the mixture, it kind of gives like a kind of a bare type bank, and then there's a little bit of grass around this dock. And again, a bass will use that dock for an ambush, that grass. But if you think of it in terms also as like it's the summertime and like me going from Kentucky to Salt Lake City, it was such a difference in the temperature. It was super hot there, but not a lot of humidity. And in Kentucky, it's super duper hot, but a lot of humidity. It's all hot. It's miserable outside. So that covers a big portion of the United States. So, for the most part, unless you're getting up into the northern states, if you're bass fishing, you can pretty much assume that the bass are going to be lethargic and they're going to be looking for shade unless it's early morning, late evening, a super cloudy, windy day, they might pull out or something like that. But on a normal summer day with, intermittent clouds or bright blue skies, they're going to be looking for the shade. I mean, that's what we do. Um, so, and, and I always think of Pam Ridgel, who was on the show back after she won the Texas tournament in March with the LBAA. She is the master of skipping docks. And that's one of the things that she excels at. So in the summertime, she's tough to beat. And the further back that you can skip a bait that you can get back there, the better you're going to do. The bass are going to get as far back there as they can, and they're going to sit and they're going to wait. They're going to that they can hide back there, but they're going to wait for the fish to come to them, for the bait to come to them, unless they absolutely don't have to. Um, or and they're going to wait for the bait to come to them, unless they absolutely have to go out after something. So they're always going to kind of think in those terms for the structure that's available. And so when you have those visible targets, it is a lot easier for you to look in your tackle box and say, okay, I have a frog and there's lily pads. Like that's kind of what I think what everybody um go like immediately goes through, um because it works. But sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes you'll be throwing that frog on the lily pads and you'll notice that they're short striking it or they're just swirling under it, and just for whatever reason they're reacting and they're not hitting it. So what's your backup plan for that? They're in the lily pads, but they're not taking a frog. Um, so you have to be, ready for bait number two. Um, and there's kind of like a deductive reasoning thing from like the top to the bottom of going through each piece of structure. And it's honestly it's different for everybody. There are some anglers that I know, um two come to mind. Probably I think I say their name every time on every episode, but Linda Gessner and Pam Martin Wells. Linda, I am totally going to have you on the show sometime soon. But Pam Martin Wells, who, I'm sure, if you're into bass fishing, you probably all know who she is. She was in the Bassmaster Classic in 2010 and she came in 22nd place. um her resume is huge. She was on the show of, I don't know, like a month or so ago. They both love throwing a frog. They might not throw anything else other than that. I would throw probably several things in that situation. And I actually have a video that I'm going to put up of a very similar situation at this pond that I'm talking about, where that was the situation with a frog where they wouldn't take it. And what I did was I had taken a Cinco and I was casting it, you know, basically on top of it was just a little teeny tiny patch of matted grass. That's all there was on that was there. And it couldn't have held very many fish. It was too shallow, and it was too small of an area that it was covering. And they they were swiping at it, but they weren't committing even to the Cinco. And because when it was hitting the water, it was immediately getting dirty. So I literally casted over top of it into the grass on the bank and was slowly bringing it down to where it like just barely fell into the water, like didn't hardly make any noise, any movement hardly, to keep it clean and just make it just as stealthy as possible. And that's how I caught my big fish. And I caught a couple of others too. Um, but I'm one of those that's going to be like, okay, I'm not going to sit here and throw a frog over and over and over and over. I'm going to try a few other things. And again, it's going to be different for everybody. Um, but I think you have to be prepared, um, to know you and what your fishing strengths and your um, abilities and what you like to throw. And but it's something that you are going to develop the more that you fish and the more things that you see. Um, it just kind of develops over time. But the ponds that have the I guess the more structure and the more things that you can see visibly, um, th- I'm not saying it's easier to catch fish there because it really just depends, but it's easier for you to kind of break down the um the pond and say, okay, there's some lay downs, there's some um there's some rock over there, there's some, and you can kind of try different targets. The thing that's going to be kind of the okay, now what do I do is going to be the pond that is the fishbowl type pond. And I don't want people to kind of be like, oh, that doesn't look like a very good pond because it has nothing to the eye. um because usually if you get up close to it and you start looking around, you will notice things that are different. And the first thing that I recommend before you go up to the pond is have yourself a good pair of polarized glasses, so that you can see into the water. These do not have to be a pair of expensive Oakleys or Costas or um, I don't even know what some of the other expensive pairs are. Honestly, the pair that I use, I won't use another pair, is the Runkle glasses. Um, they are under $25. They have a pair that float, which is good, especially if you're on a boat. um, but I have seen multiple things under water that people with more expensive glasses have not been able to see. I don't need anything else more proof positive than that for me. And I've actually, if you go to the Bassing Gal YouTube page, if you might even be watching this on the Bass and Gal page, but if you are, if you go to um, and flip through the videos, I did a video where I'm filming um, a female on a bed, and I put the sunglasses over top of my phone camera, and you see the fish, and then I take it off, you see nothing. That just kind of tells you the effectiveness of the glasses. Again, they're under $25 with no discount code, no anything. But I will link the or put the link and a discount code in the description. But I recommend that, and this is why. So when you walk up to one of these ponds, keep this in mind. It took me about 2 months to realize this. When you start walking up to one of these ponds, you will see fish responding to you. Like, you might think you're being quiet walking up to that pond, but you're not. They can hear your bags moving around on your shoulder. They can hear you fiddling with your phone. They hear your steps move in the grass. I mean, they literally they hear all of that, and you can see fish moving off of the bank because their area, like, they can sense it. And like, I have learned to, when I'm going to start making casts, especially if the sun is at my back, I get way, 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 way off of the bank. I don't fish anywhere close to the actual bank, whether I'm fishing like parallel or making a cast out to the middle. I really try and stay far away from the actual pond because I swear it's almost like they can feel you, like they feel your presence over top of them. It, it makes it a lot tougher. So I would recommend having the glasses so that you can see what's going on down there. because there's going to be things that happen throughout the seasons that is going to mean a lot to you. And it's going to start in, you know, early spring, starting with the spawn, where you're going to start seeing beds, you're going to start seeing males come up, you're going to start, seeing them get, where they're guarding, but they're not aggressive. Then when they're aggressive on the beds, then you're going to start seeing females come up, and then you're going to start seeing, the males protecting fry, and then you're going to see, where the spawn is over, but then you're going to see the bluegill come up and start spawning. And then that makes the bass come up and makes them aggressive and feeding on the bluegill, and stuff like that. And seeing all of that take place underwater is information for you. Um, and I have learned so much just this year, being able to see what is happening on the bank, than I could have ever learned fishing from a boat, because I've been able to watch exactly how the bass are reacting to different baits and different stages. Um, it's very frustrating at times. I have learned that there are definitely times when you cannot fish slow enough. Like, and I know that for some people that's not even an issue. Like, they love fishing slow and finesse, and like they really don't have an issue with it. And for some people it's like, oh, I hate finesse fishing. And I get that. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't mind fishing slow, but I think of how many fish this year I would have never caught, had I not been staring at the fish, looking at my bait. And only because I was just waiting for it to bite. In normal circumstances, if I was fishing from the boat, I would have never been looking at that fish. I would have never known that he was just looking at my bait like this, and I just had to jiggle it a couple more times, or I just had to move it a little, or do this or do that to get him to bite. If I was fishing from the boat, I would have made my standard cast. I would have, you know, moved it a few times, or, and then I would have cranked it in and moved on. And so I take that knowledge with me, and I know that when I start, you know, fishing too fast, and I'm then fishing from the the middle of the bank, or the middle of the lake, and I'm fishing towards the bank, I do need to slow down some when I'm fishing my plastics, when I'm fishing my Ned rigs, my Nico rigs. I do need to slow down, because you know, bass are not always going to take, you know, that bait on, on the fall, on the first, 3, 4, 5 seconds. A lot of people think that they will. They don't. They don't always. How many times have you heard, and think about it, how many times have you heard about where you've asked somebody, like, how did you catch that fish? And somebody's like, oh, well, I got this huge overrun in my line, and I was sitting there picking out the overrun. My bait was just sitting there, and I got it out and I started reeling it in, and it was heavy, and there was that big fish. You hear that all the time. Or you'll hear, oh, I just cast it out my line, and, kind of forgot it was there, was talking, and all of a sudden the line felt heavy and there was that big fish. It happens all the time. Those big fish, a lot of times, will just sit there and look at it and look at it and look at it. And if you fish too fast, you miss those fish. Like, it would keep me up at night thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I wonder how many 6, 7, maybe 8 pounders were just sitting there looking at my Cinco, Flappy Daddy, Lizard, whatever, and just was like, "Oh, whatever, that's fake. Nothing moves that fast." And probably a lot. Um, so you really have to take those things into consideration when you're fishing from the boat. And it took me fishing from the bank to learn those lessons. And I don't think that somebody else could have convinced me of that. I'm hard headed and I learn lessons the hard way. So had I not just done this myself, I probably never would have learned as hard as I did. And when it comes to fishing the pond bowl, I definitely think that if you approach it like, okay, I'm going up and I'm looking at this pond and it just doesn't look like a bass would want to be here because it doesn't look special. This is what I look for as soon as I get there is where's the dam? And it might not be like a dam, but there's going to naturally be a side of the pond that is deeper. There should be. Might not be very much, but there should be a side that's deeper. So I look for that. And then I'm looking for um, a change in the bank, whether it's like, okay, there's mostly just kind of like a mud bank or, like a grassy type reed bank, but then there's some rock over here. That is important for me because especially in from the we'll say from the winter going into the spring, you know that the bass are making beds on those rocks. So to concentrate there. And there's going to be those little changes, you know, like throughout the year of different things that in that pond that are going to stick out to the fish that they're going to gravitate to. Um, and so that's what you have to make note of. And what's the shallowest part? Because going from winter into the early spring, like before the spawn, they're going to find that shallow water because they want that sun. That's the part that's going to warm up the fastest. So they're going to be working their way towards that. Look to see if there are cuts in the bank, and remember, like, these are going to be very subtle. Like we say, like cuts and pockets and stuff like on big lakes. But sometimes, I mean, they're on ponds as well. They're just really subtle. So like you might be I'm trying to see on the if you look at the thumbnail for this show and the pond bowl, like it's pretty specific, like just round, but then you'll see like at the bottom it's got the one little like thing like that, and that would be like a pond version of a point, and underwater it could even go out further. And the pond that I fish, that I caught the two bigger fish on last year and this year, it actually has um I don't know if it was man-made, if it just kind of happened this way, but there is a gravel like point that goes right after a cut that goes out into the water. And this pond that I fish is probably at the most 8 foot deep, at the most. And it's hard to find a lot of things to fish because underneath, where it was kind of healthy grass, it gets real mossy, and so it's hard to fish like crankbaits, even rattle traps, any type of Texas rig. um so sometimes you got to get really creative as to what you can throw in a place, you know, that has the moss, and a lot of times you're going to find it in a pond. Um, but we can, we'll cover stuff like that in another episode because that can get, you know, pretty specific. But so you're looking for those transition areas, um as far as, cuts or points or um, anything like that that's going to draw in a bass. And it doesn't have to be something that's, that we can see. It can be, something underwater. So if you feel something different underwater, you've got to make a mental note of that. And it really could be where you feel the bottom and it's like, oh, like that feels sandy, like that feels like sand or mud. And then if you feel the bottom and it's like, oh, well, now that feels kind of rocky, you know, they're going to, that is a change for them. So you've got to, you know, keep keep that in your head because at different times that's going to be a transition point for them, whether it's going to be um for the like the spawn when the rocks hold heat, or if it's just a regular, you know what, we're all going to sit right here on this divide because for whatever reason bass do that. They do it on lakes or whatever. Like if you're going down a lake and there's this huge row of, you know red clay banks, and then you see um pea gravel, fish that transition point, right where it transitions. And a lot of times there will be, multiple fish or at least one fish. Like usually you can pick up a fish right at that transition. Why? I have no idea. I cannot tell you why. All I know is it's something that, throughout my fishing career, I've been told that, and I have caught fish that way. Why the fish relate to that, I really don't know why they do that. And maybe it's because that's something that the bait fish are drawn into. But it is something that does consistently work. So it works with the ponds as well. The bass that are in a pond have the same exact instincts as the fish that are in lakes. And another thing is that the the fish that are in ponds, I think that their, I guess, I don't want to say their instincts are more fine tuned, but they're definitely very leery. Like I can't explain it. It's just you'll see what I mean when you get out there. If you're on a pond um that is pressured a lot, you're going to see fish scattering and stuff just when you start approaching the pond because again, that's just what they do. They sense danger and they leave, they go deep. And so just keep that in mind. And fish especially in summer, fish the storm systems, before a thunderstorm moves in, fish that system, fish the after the storm system, take advantage of those, vulnerabilities when bass are supposed to be, active. Like that's supposed to, open up a window for you. And so that can also be a good time for you to kind of go out and test whether or not that should be a good pond for you to really um, spend time on in the future, I guess, if that makes sense. Go and test it when it's supposed to be pretty active, which would be, early morning, late evening, um, right before like a front comes in. And if you get a few bites, if you catch a couple nice fish, then you know that they're not the only ones there. And then you can go and pick it apart, at some point later and time, and you have a consistent place to go back to catch some fish. Um, and when it comes to, I mean, again, and that's for the whole episode, that's been just for bass. And if you think about it, if you can catch bass out of there, you know that there's going to be, sunfish in there. More than likely, there's going to be, catfish. Probably, I know in Kentucky, a lot of times there's going to be carp. Um, I never knew how popular carp fishing was until I was on TikTok. I had no idea. It is huge. People are crazy into carp fishing. So I don't know what I'm missing out on, if anything, but people love it. I'm sure that there is a lot of them, that are in a lot of these smaller ponds. I guess there's probably not a lot per pond because I think one carp can probably eat a lot of grass. I don't know. I don't even know what they eat. Um, but I do know that if I was fishing for carp, I was always told that you use a Wheaties, like make a Wheaties ball with honey and red pop soda and put it into like a pair of hose for a um as a bait keeper. So I might try that, but I don't know. I don't really like carp. But, you can go and you could try anything like that. Um, Try a couple of different ponds and the when it comes to like if you're going to go after just panfish or something like that, it's tough to beat live bait, for those. Um, but with bass, it's going to be pretty much your deductive, these are my favorite, techniques and you just kind of going down your list to see, what works. And I definitely think that if you go through that and you kind of identify some of the things on the pond that look just a little bit different, or work as ambush points, I really do think you'll be able to catch you some bass. Remember, it is the dog days of summer. It's been brutally hot everywhere, so it's going to be tough, and that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. Don't get down on yourself because it's hard to catch a fish. Um, I I don't want anybody to go out and give up because they're having a hard time, um, because you can miss out on so much great fishing if you judge it based on the dog days of summer. It's gonna be tough, but that's one of the things that can make you great is when you are out there you're out there fishing these tough conditions. You know, it take it as learning experiences because if you can go out and catch fish, especially during these tough times, if you can figure it out during these times, you're going to be even better, during the easier times. And that's something to keep in mind, fish during the tough times. It'll make the easier times a lot, a lot easier on you mentally and physically and emotionally. So just keep all that in mind and go and just try and have some fun, figure some things out, and email the show, leave some comments, let us know how we can help. We love to just anything we can do to help. That's what we like to do. That's why we do these shows. That's why we answer emails and questions and comments and stuff like that. So just let us know. Um we will be back again next Monday, which I don't remember what the date is. Next Monday. I'm too tired to know. But we'll be back on next Monday, and I'm not sure exactly. It is going to be a part 4 for fishing for beginners, but I'm not sure exactly what part um we will do, as far as if it's going to be bait related, if it's going to be more specific as far as where to fish again, um, with or without a boat, if we might cover, something like, fishing from a river system, because I'm not sure how many people, like fish from the bank on rivers, or, let us know. If there's something specific that you want us to cover in the fishing for beginners, let us know, because I have a huge long list and we're trying to cover everything on and off throughout that. So keep sending those so that we don't miss anything. It is women's world of fishing at gmail.com. Because I promise you, we're not trying to leave anybody's questions out or anything like that. It's just that when we first put that idea out there, the request back was all over the map, and so we're just trying to fit everything in. So watch for the show description for next week. Angie, hopefully she will be back next week. I know she'll probably be exhausted, but hopefully we'll have her back. And Pam and Sherry, again, all the just best wishes for you for tomorrow. Good luck, and I hope you get some rest tonight. I'm sure you probably won't, but I hope that you do. I hope you guys catch some huge fish, and that one of you get to represent Team USA. It would be amazing to have one of the LBAA girls represent us for the USA. So, again, any questions, let us know. And otherwise, we will see everybody next Monday. All right, everybody, have a good night. Mwah.